I'm here on the barge that's been supporting the clipper ship City of Adelaide here. This year is going to be a huge year. I have Norman Ratcliffe, one of the volunteer maintenance chappies with me this morning, and he's going to explain, or endeavour to explain, the work that has already been conducted, what we're in process of, and what is still to come in this monumentous year. So I'll hand it over to you, Norm.
Right.
Yeah, so what are we going to do next?
Well, you'll see later on a lot of work's actually been already done here. What's been happening in the last 2 or 3 months is, if you just glance across there, you'll see some beams resting on the cradle. I'll just pop in here and then I can explain and show you what we've actually been doing to preparing the actual ship for jacking purposes. What we've actually done, we've had to, this beam here, which is a Macmillan beam, we've had to bring through, fit a platform to it either side, because this is where the actual jack for jacking up the ship is going to sit. I mean, I'm showing you this one, but we've actually got 4 of these along each side. What we've been doing in the last couple of weeks, we've actually dragged this big beam here through from the far end there. We've actually dragged it through here and then bolted it into the cradle, because that is actually the jacking beam. We've actually got to put another beam on top for the simple reason to give it that extra strength, because as I've said before, what you're looking at here is roughly around about 600 to 700 tonne with the cradle and the ship. Now what's going to happen is this jack, as I say, is going to be sitting here. It gradually jacks up this beam here. What we've actually got to do, as I say, we're jacking this cradle up, is we've got to actually block underneath here. What we're actually using is 1 metre lengths hard timber, roughly 75 mil square. And what we do is we actually build these up. This is just an example for you. 1 layer that way, the next layer then goes across this way, and then so forth. The next layer obviously goes this way, then that way, and then when we get to there, we can then jack up the ship a bit more and actually keep this process going. Now, as I said earlier, we've got actually 4 of these stations on each side. That goes underneath that cradle. We got another stack underneath that one there. So you've got 8 along here and 8 the other side. This beam we're actually looking at here is actually to give it extra support once it's up in the air. I mean, as you can see, it's excuse me, it's fairly long. We've actually got to push it in and then either pull it or push it along here underneath this 8-side cradle beam, and that's what the actual framework is going to sit on. There's 4 of these beams, 1 each end and 1 either side. I mean, that, as I say, is to give it that extra support, because these are solid beams. I mean, then because what we've actually got to do after we're there and there is all that material that's inside there for the jacking beams and everything, and for the jack to sit on, has actually got to be removed so the SPMTs can go through. SPMTs, as I said before, is self-propelled modular transporters. I'm actually standing on the staircase that lead off of the barge up so that people can actually go inside of the ship and have a tour around. The problem we've got though is the staircase and the scaffold is actually on the barge. So what we've got to do now in the next couple of weeks is actually remove all of the scaffold and the staircase. Then we've actually then got to put these stairs back, but they're going to sit in a position not here, they're actually going to come, this one here, this side of the stairs here is actually going to be sitting on that beam, and the rest of the scaffold is then going to be on the beam as well, so that when we do actually move the cradle and ship, all this stairs and scaffold gets transported with the cradle. At a later date, this barge eventually will be turned around. I mean, when it does get turned around, obviously the gangplank's not going to be here. I mean, because in the process of us getting here, if you just like to look over here, the actual steel rail or guardrail that goes round the bow of the barge has got to be actually cut and dismantled, this side and the other side there, to allow the SPMTs to be able to get onto the barge and also to carry it all off. As I said earlier, we're actually going to turn this barge right the way around 180 degrees. To do that, we're going to need the help of a couple of the tugs, because they will then come and push the barge out into the midstream of the river, turn it 180 degrees, and then it will then eventually be brought right the way in and actually taken right to the other end of Dock 2. If you actually look between the Switzer shed down there and the cranes, that is where the actual barge is going to be pushed down to there so that the ship can be unloaded by the SPMTs. We're now at the other end of Dock 2. What I was explaining about when the barge is turned around, it's being brought right the way down here and actually going to be settled up there. But before we can do that, we've got to try and level this off as smooth as possible. What we're going to do is move some of those boulders out the way and actually put bags of concrete that will actually set when the tide comes up. We've also got to rely on the tide, because we don't want the ship or the barge going up and down like this. So what we're actually going to do in the process is actually, when the barge is actually pushed up as far up as it'll go, we will then fill the hold, or the holds I should say, with water to settle her down on that embankment. Then what we might have to do then is actually build some kind of bridge from the road onto the barge, so that the SPMTs will be coming down the road here and getting onto the barge to take the cradle and the ship off. All the way around here, in between the two sheds that's over there, and round into the pit that will be in the process of being dug. I mean, we are actually fencing that area off starting tomorrow. I mean, it's a big size area to be fenced off, but hopefully the weather's going to be favourable for us and we can do that tomorrow. And then in the next couple of weeks, the pit will be dug.